in the world of bids have something come up last minute and say, this sounds really interesting, please can you record it? So I will formally start and say thank you everyone so much for joining. Panelists in particular, thank you for taking time out of your days to join this webinar, which is all about people's bids, careers, where they're going, what people should be focusing on to upskill, what the world is going to look like in 5 years' time, and that people can join now. So I'm David Wall, one of the recruiters at 3Search, joined by the other David, D squared. We need to come up with a better tagline. But can I quickly do introductions with everyone else? And then, we'll get cracking with hopefully the first of many questions. Chloe, do you want to go first? You're top left on my corner on my screen.
Thank you, David. Hi, everyone. So Chloe Dillon. I've been working in the bidding industry for more years than I care to remember. David asked earlier if it's more than 10, and I think I'm actually heading towards 20 nearly. So quite a long time. And I've worked in a variety of different sectors, both here in the UK and also in the Middle East. So I've worked for security consultancies, engineering, construction firms, and most recently I've been at PwC for the last nearly 7 years, I think.
Great. Thank you. Melissa?
Hi, so I'm Client Pursuit Director at JLL. I've been in bidding for about 10 years, and I actually come from a background of working in television and then marketing for insurance and real estate. So very varied background, but now focusing on bidding for the past, as I said, 10 years. So I'm at JLL for 6.
Great. And Mike?
Hi everyone, I'm Mike Reeder. I'm Director of Work Winning for Mace. I head up Mace's work winning team in our consult business, so that's capture, bids and opportunities and intelligence. I actually trained as a civil engineer, so I'm one of those people that fell into bidding, but I've always been in construction consultancy, both in a smaller SME firm and more recently, now 4 years at Mace.
Right. And go on then, David. Have a quick intro.
So I'm the other David here, David Bremner. I've been recruiting bids and proposal roles probably for about 6 years or so now, across all sectors, but mainly for the 3 panelists that are joining us today.
Well, to everyone listening, watching, again, thank you for joining. We've got a chat function. A lot of people asked questions when they registered, so I think this webinar could go on for about 4 hours, but if anyone's got anything really pressing, please throw it in the chat. I will try and get round to answering them, but I think we've got more than enough to go on. So I'm going to throw in the first question to you guys, which came up a lot when people registered. How do we keep a bid career interesting? How do you find the variety to keep people engaged for many years to come? Who would like to take that really open first question?
Okay, I'll go, David. I think the important thing is when you first start off, there are so many different things that you can do within the whole stages of pursuit, whether that's writing, bid management, coaching, cap stage, everything, designing, all sorts. So getting a really good foundation of everything is probably really important. But then to keep it interesting, once you've kind of decided where you want to go, that may well change as you get on in your career. So never closing doors is obviously very important. And there's lots of transferable skills, and it's the way that you potentially sell those skills to employers when you are looking for new roles. But variety, I think, is the spice of life. So if you can move around industries, if you can move around types of bids you work on, working with small teams, working with large teams, in different sectors, and when you go to employers and you kind of make sure you're selling the fact that you can bring that industry knowledge from somewhere else, I think that's really important. So often we get asked by pursuit teams, the clients going, I know what you guys do, but I want to know what somewhere else is doing in a different sector. So I think that's really important. Trying to keep it as interesting as possible is by doing a variety of different things, I suspect.
Yeah, I would support that. I guess for me, it's also a personal question of why you're in bids in the first place. So if, like me, you like winning, I even made my job title work winning, just to make everyone knew exactly what my role is. I've moved from bigger to bigger pursuits, you know, and my bids now that if I end up ever being a bid director, which I do try and avoid now, you know, we're talking 200-300 people working on one bid, so they're nice and big and chunky. When you win them, it's a really nice experience. Or people might join because they enjoy the technical challenge of bid management, the project management side of it, or writing. And so I think you need to find a career path that aligns to what your goals are. It doesn't have to be getting bigger and progressing up the chain. I think as well, keeping things interesting could be, as Chloe said, moving between teams, moving between sectors. And that's like we've tried to do at Mace. We have segregated our team into sub bid teams now, so that people can move sideways in the team and get a new experience of a different sector, a different market. The UK property market is very different to the bidding market in the Middle East. It's very different to the bidding market in corporate real estate in America. So we've kind of got the opportunity now for people to move sideways, as well as just thinking you move up as one career path.
Mike, something we're seeing, and on that, good bids people is hard to find. So we know a couple of our clients that are desperate to not let people move. I'm sure you've got, you know, team leaders in each service line that are like, no, stay. We can't let people move. How can we get that collaboration or engagement across businesses to let people move?
It's like you were on my start of the week call for my senior leadership team this morning.
There we go.
We had this big discussion because actually we are now in Mace have a real push on internal mobility, and we had a long discussion about all our team and how they could move out of bidding, which is a bit of a weird discussion to have, but actually there's so many transferable skills in our bid team that would enable people to transfer out of bids into our consultancy business. So I think we've just got to be open around understanding what the core skills are that people have. You know, I have people in my intelligence and opportunities team who are great with data. They would do fantastic work in our project controls business doing information management. We've got bid managers who would be great on a mega project in Saudi or Canada or Greece, you know, the 3 kind of mega projects we're doing right now, who would transfer straight away as a project manager. And actually I see our internal client-facing teams coming to our bid team for best practice and how to run really complicated projects, you know, review processes, governance, drumbeats, roles, responsibilities, team management. Actually, all the skills that a really good bid manager has are transferable outside of the bidding industry. But the reason it kind of resonated with me when you said, you know, you don't want to lose people, I said this morning, we lost someone quite senior from our team last year, and I thought it was going to be a real kind of problem, but actually we got someone even better in that we didn't think we would find, and they came from outside, semi-outside of the bidding industry. So actually someone said with every door closes another one opens this morning, and I think that's very, very true. I think people moving is sometimes a good thing, actually, to give people the opportunity.
I was just going to say, I don't have the answer because it's something that we focus on internal mobility at PwC for many years, and we've lost a lot of people. But if you look on the plus side, it means that, and I say lose people internally to other sales teams, add to the business as well, but actually it makes that you create a better team. So when you're creating that bid team, that pursuit team that's been working on that opportunity, when you've got like an account manager that used to sit in, for example, bids and proposals, and they've been through that kind of, they know what they're doing already, it can make a much stronger team. And ultimately we're all out there to win. So if we can do that and we can basically kind of grow the ether of bids professionals, then it's got to be a good thing. So
Melissa, you mentioned in your intro you came from TV, so I've got to ask, like, how did you end up in this world?
Oh, kind of fell into it, I guess. So yeah, I got a journalism degree and I started working in production in television, which is what I thought I wanted to do with the rest of my life. Then that sort of spun into corporate marketing, and then corporate marketing led me to Pursuit. So I was just doing like maybe 5 a year or something. And when I moved over to London, they were looking for a bid manager at JLL, and it was sort of all of the qualifications that I had, because I wanted someone who was going to innovate and drive change and sort of come up with new ways of presenting and thinking. And so my background actually really helped and lent to me being successful at this and moving up the ranks. So yeah, it's not something that you have to start from being a bid coordinator to get here. You know, you can have a different career and move over to this, and there's a lot of transferable skills. You don't need to have been in bids to join the bid team. I think there's so many different paths that you can take here.
Okay. All three of you have then talked about, I suppose, different options. And Chloe, you mentioned people moving out of bids into an account management role or internally. David, we see quite a few people at manager grade come to us and say, what else is out there? Two questions for you as a panel. What can we be doing to keep people in this industry? And then the other side of that is, well, look, what are the opportunities that bidding can do for you? We talk to a lot of people, don't we, David, who want to move into sales and then hate it and come back. But yeah, guys, what's your take on it?
Managing the work-life balance would be my first one.
Yeah.
Which is possible, but it's hard work to do it from a management point of view. But I think everyone also needs to take an onus on themselves to look after themselves as well. But it's hand in hand. And I think it's also important that people recognize what their skills have and be recognized for those skills. So often when you work on a bid and you're working crazy hours and stuff, and you might get a thank you at the end, sometimes you don't get anything. I think celebrating your successes and people recognizing that ultimately those people that get that bid over the line are the most important people in that project, because it doesn't matter whether you win or lose it. If you don't get it over the line by the deadline, you've got a chance either way. So and ultimately it's those bid professionals often that are those people responsible for that. And so recognizing how important it is, and that it's a profession. These people are bid professionals. And I think everybody who works in bidding should take that as for me, I feel quite passionately, we should all take an action to make sure that everyone is aware that it's a profession, and we are the professionals in that. So and making sure that everyone is recognizing that and recognizing people, how hard they're working and what a great job they're doing on bids. And so often people don't get that.
Yeah,
I think there's been oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Go on, you go.
Oh, I was just going to say, I think there's been a massive evolution in the last 5 years with what Chloe's saying of, you know, we were just looked at people who would make stuff look pretty for the client. And now there's actually people like reaching out and going, we need a strategy, like we need to put a session in. I want your advice on something else that I'm working on. And so there's definitely that maturing of the profession, that it's looked at as someone who's an expert at a particular skill set that maybe our stakeholders are missing. So
yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think well-being and work-life balance is such a hot topic at the moment in the industry, and we've gone through a bit of a journey with our team in it being very much it was the business's fault that people were overworked, to really people recognize they need to take some ownership of their own work-life balances, and what are they doing to manage the fast-paced nature of bidding. I think if you're in bidding, you have to understand it isn't a 9-to-5 job, and I think we have to be honest about that. There are times when you work late and you might end up working weekends and missing stuff, but equally it's a highly rewarding job when you kind of do it for the love of the job. And saying thank you, I think that's one of our roles as leaders, is to be reminding our peers outside of the bid team to be saying thank you, and I police the behaviours of my colleagues in Mace to encourage them to be saying thank you, or even to reminding them when perhaps, you know, they haven't fully recognised what the team have done for them and the extra they've gone for. We apparently, before I joined Mace, they used to go for champagne breakfast when they won a big bid, but now we have a drugs and alcohol policy that's been knocked on the head. But we did go out we're now doing work winners breakfast every 2 months, and we went out for a greasy spoon in East London the other week, and that was fantastic, just to get the whole team together and have a fry up, and just a chance to say thank you. All the team leaders talked about all the wins they've had, and some personal wins as well, from people who bought a new house to complete a professional qualification, and actually just a great opportunity to bring everyone together and celebrate. It doesn't have to be champagne and posh food. It could just be a £7 fry up down the road, and everyone's equally happy.
I'm going to play devil's advocate then. You guys have all talked about variety and being able to move. David, I want to come to you because you're at the coalface of this.
Yeah.
We see so many job specs where a business wants a graphic designer who can write, who can project manage, normally who can speak a couple of languages, who can work all hours of the day. How many of those job specs are you seeing, and what are you trying to tell clients at the moment?
Well, in terms of the type of candidate they're looking for,
Yeah.
I think it's important to reflect, I think, on maybe years before the pandemic and what clients wanted. And I think, Mike, you alluded to this like early in the conversation. I think companies wanted to get candidates that had, as close to their service lines as possible. We're in a market now where I don't think hiring managers have that luxury anymore. My personal view is that I think it has to come down to the functionality of the bid manager, and it varies from company to company. So as an example, you might have bid managers who are just project management focused. You might have some that have more input to the RFP strategy or more to do like the stakeholder management. I think candidates' availability to move around a bit more is looking at companies that will be more weighted towards like one of those kind of like key disciplines in their role, and then maybe try and make a move from there. So I don't know if the panel's got a different view on that, but I think it comes down to what specific functionality of what a bid manager does.
I have mixed views. I think it depends as well where you are in your career. So I think there's a place for those, a generalist bid professional who might be the only person in the business or one of two, and you're writing CVs, you're managing the bid, you're doing a bit of design work, you're coaching interviews, etc. And that's how I started. I started as one bid person at a firm in Leicester called Big Everard for the business. But for a large multinational like Mace and PwC and JLL, that's where we have the scale to have those specialisms, and that's where we see a real benefit in developing people within those specialisms. But I think from a more kind of assistant manager level, that generalist skill is really good because you do get exposure to the broad range of things you do as a bid professional, and it gives people a chance to experience quite a broad range of bids and also take quite a lot of responsibility quite early. I was probably not the right thing to do. I was bid managing bids from day one, with and learned every bad trick and bad trait in the book probably over those first couple of years. But I wore out Control C and Control V, that's for certain. But I think it's a good place to start. But I think businesses do need to recognise if they want a mature bid team that really works as a team, you've got to focus down on specialisms, and it opens up doors. We've got people joining our business from military backgrounds because they're really good at intelligence and capture. We've got people who come from journalist backgrounds to come into writing or design, like Melissa has in our case, into our design business, into our design team. So it does open up our opportunity. And if we've got a skills shortage, and I think before the call all of us said we are madly trying to recruit people and can't find people quick enough, I think us being more open about those opportunities gives opportunity to people to enter our industry.
So Melissa, then, if you were having a careers advice conversation with someone who is 2 or 3 years into the world of bidding, and they turn to you and they say they really enjoyed writing, do they stick to writing, or would you encourage them to try and better their project management skills, to upskill on broader bid management? What would your advice be?
Oh, that's a good one. I think it really depends on the person. If they really like doing bid writing, but they really want to explore other areas or want to upskill, then you want to help them become sort of the best at everything that they want to achieve. If they really are passionate about bid writing, then I think that's something you need to support, and you need to sort of help carry them on that career path. And so it's just it's a hard one without knowing sort of the individual and how they
The
work.
hypothetical individual.
Yeah, the hypothetical. I feel like that's why you have to sit down and sort of talk to your team and develop career paths so you know where they want to go and you can support whatever direction that is.
And I'll open this up to you, all three of you then. If someone does like or sees one specialist role as their key enjoyment, is there a long-term career in doing, you know, bid graphics or writing or project management or RFPs or just capture? Like, do you think there is a long term?
I would say yes. We've just created a career pathway Ops director for those things. So, yes, definitely. I would take it back to the fact that I would always focus on someone's strengths. And normally someone has a natural place that they're naturally, it's easy. They don't have to think about it, you know, and it comes naturally. They don't have to work hard at it, and they love it. And that's the thing that actually will take you through your career, that you don't have to, it's not a chore. You don't have to work really hard at it. And focusing on people's strengths to make them even better at something they're already good at is very, very, it's easier, but it's also much more fulfilling for the person rather than to focus on something that they're not naturally, like, that's where they wouldn't be. And as I said, Melissa, you're right. It is up to the individual. And I would always say, if you're naturally good at something, you enjoy that, try something else. You can always go back to it. Like, those roles aren't going to disappear. So try it. Why not? Because you might actually find you don't enjoy that thing more. And if you have the skill set and you're naturally good at that as well, then great. So, but yes, I do think you can stay and like follow a career pathway and I think actually probably more and more so now. I think the nature of bidding is it's getting more complex, and actually it's getting more professional. Businesses see it as a professional function, and so there are much more opportunities to go all the way up in each of the different areas you choose.
Just from a kind of recruiter standpoint then, and maybe for, you know, the voice of the candidates, like for candidates that want to go on these different pathways, then it's companies with the size and scale of the work winning teams that you have that are going to be more able to make those different kind of like career paths, rather than, you know, being a one-man bid manager and, you know, a company in deepest darkest Kent possibly. So yeah, that's just for candidates kind of voice there, I think.
Agreed. And I think if you the larger the company, the more specialist you'll end up being potentially. So if you're one of those people that loves doing a bit of everything and you want to work across the whole thing in design, writing, management, capture, coaching, everything, then you're probably better off working for a company that you do it all. Whereas I would say larger companies do split it up.
Great.
I think that's the great thing about our profession, though, is that there is a place for people who are generalists who want to do it all. It's almost like, you know, HR, isn't it? They have HR generalists who will work for a company and do everything, and then you'll have, in larger firms like ours, you'll have specialists who do those recruitment or talent development or people issues. Business partner, that's what they call it. So I think that's the same for bidding. I think we should recognise that in the industry, that a bid manager is a very kind of broad term, and I find that recruiting, right? You know, I've interviewed a bid manager before who worked on the same bid for 4 years, working for Virgin Media, bidding to the government. You know, they went to like 32 PIC reviews or something ridiculous. Or, you know, my team in India, their bids last on average 3 days. You know, client sends a request in and it's out within the week. So there's actually, even within our industry, there's a real broad scale of what those kind of general roles mean.
Yeah.
A continuation of that then, because this was, I think, 8-9 different people had all written it when they registered. A question for the panel was that variety. If you can't find it internally and you want to move, but not just moving to your competitor doing the same bids, how do you move industry? Chloe, you mentioned, I think you did security out in the Middle East, didn't you? And then moved into professional services. What would you encourage people to do to be able to make that move?
So first of all, I think everybody should look internally at themselves. So self-awareness is massively important. Gathering feedback from people you work with is hugely important to see, if you can't see it yourself, what do other people see in you? And listen to what people are saying, because I think that will massively like help you decide where you think you should be going and what you should be doing. I think for moving industries, don't forget that, like, the baseline, the technical skill set is the same. It might be ramped up in a different area, a different industry, but the technical skill set is the same. And selling yourself is obviously the most important thing. And I'm a strong believer in the fact that working in, somebody once asked me what the difference was bidding and sales. And I was like, bidding people are sales professionals. We're sales professionals. We're just like, so making sure you're selling yourself is very important.
I would say too, just highlighting those transferable skills, because I mean,
Yeah.
that's sort of what I found, is that if you highlight what you can actually do in bid management already, then you're sort of proving that you're mostly there already.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think it is a challenge. I think sector knowledge is important, and so you've got to go into it eyes open. If you're going to move sectors, that there's going to be a learning curve to understand the terminology, the people, the type of bids that sector is doing. And as you know, said alluded to earlier, a bid manager in two sectors can do very, very, very different things. I think maybe it's easier for people in more junior roles to move because they're probably more around the skills of, you know, bid management, project management, coordination, basic design. I think as you get more senior, potentially, particularly in a technical bidding environment like at Mace, it's more difficult to transfer in from outside of the sector. Oh, my battery's running low. That's not good, is it? Because I'm gonna have to just go and get a charger. This is embarrassing. But I think it is doable. But I think you'll go to eyes open. You've got to be able to build rapport quickly, get to know your new market, and really want to do the extra homework to learn what it is you're actually bidding with.
Yeah.
I'm going to move locations.
David, go Melissa then. While Mike's doing that, Melissa and Chloe, yeah, you're hiring managers. Melissa, you talked about, I think it's easier at the junior level to move. So when you're looking at recruiting into your own teams or growing, you know, and you see that someone has come from IT or something completely different, you talked about variety. Is there anything else that you look for or that you'd want someone to bring across?
Yeah, I mean, I look at things like stakeholder management and time management, project management. I think it's those sort of what you call soft skills that are really, really important.
Yeah, I was going to say the soft skills are massively important. So being able to understand people and being, at the end of the day, if you're working with lots of people. And so you need to be able to flex your style depending on the types of individuals you're working with. And those people will be different on every single opportunity. So, I mean, like a bid is basically like a project. So every project you're working on, it's different people. So understanding how you can do that, and no bid is exactly the same. So being able to kind of accommodate different needs, different people, different ideas every time, I think is very important.
Yeah, that's so true. I mean, you won't find this in the APMP handbook, but like my definition of bid management is around project managing business development. And to be a good project manager, you need to have, you know, all those soft skills that that you spoke about. You need to be able to understand how to influence people with lots of different agendas to get them to fall into your timeframes. So yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment.
And guys, on that, Josephine's written in the comments a really interesting point that be careful if you are moving, because skill set's the same, but you need to be interested in the subject matter. So we can open a whole world here, but do you think it's important? I mean, Chloe, you talked about self-awareness and thinking before jumping. Like, how would you advise someone to work out? You know, David and I hear it a lot, I suppose. Everyone wants to work in IT at the moment because it's seen as the new exciting world. But yeah.
So I think on the sector thing, I'm not sure I've been interested in any particular sector I've ever worked in, but most of them have been services. So they're providing like services. I've worked like legal, kind of, they're all being kind of like professional services that have been selling people into other organizations. And so I don't think actually what they're delivering isn't important. I would caveat that with, I have interviewed people in the past who love public sector bidding because they want to feel like they're giving something back and doing the right thing. And they are extremely passionate about particular things. And it's been amazing when it's something they're passionate about. When they're not, it's not been great because they haven't agreed necessarily with what we're trying to win the work for, etc. And I think that can be difficult. But generally, I think from a sector, it's the people. I mean, at the end of the day, when you're working on those big projects with people from 3 days to 2 years, it's actually those individuals you work with on a daily basis and how you're working with them, which are the things that drive me personally.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I disagree. But because I love the sector I work in, and I don't think I'd work outside the built environment. But I guess I came into bidding through the sector as a civil engineer. So for me, having real kind of passion, and actually Elke's put it in the chat, curiosity about the sector that I work in, I couldn't see myself moving out of something related to the built environment because I really like the fact that the bids we deliver a product at the end of it. As we're doing consultancy, but I can go and see the projects that we delivered. I actually this last autumn got to go visit the first bid I ever won when I joined Mace, which was the pavilion at the Dubai Expo, and that was just a really nice feeling to think actually the first thing I did, and it was really rubbish. They set the deadline of the 28th of December, which UK client does that, but we won it, and I got to go and walk around this finished product that I could say I had a hand in creating. So for me personally, being in the sector for me is really important, and I think I'd struggle to move outside of the sector. But it's interesting to hear, Chloe, you've moved between professional services.
So I was going to say I've also worked in the built environment, as you describe it, and I quite enjoyed going to client site, putting a hard hat on, and going to look at those finished projects as well. But I don't really miss it now. I'm doing something totally different. So maybe that's just me. I'm a bit of a chameleon.
Maybe it's me. I did take my now wife on one of our first dates to go see a mini roundabout I designed when I was a graduate engineer. So, it's still there in Surrey. If anyone wants to go visit, drop me a note afterwards. I'll give you the location.
And that seems as good a point as ever to try and move this conversation on. We get a lot of questions, and this came up again in when people signed up for this, of the move from, I suppose, a bid manager up to senior manager or up to director or associate director leader. You three have all done it. What would your advice be to someone who feels like they are stuck at manager grade on how to take that step and to make sure that they don't feel like their career's stalling?
My point would be going back to feedback, making sure that you're self-aware enough. We have a framework, and so it's on behaviors and attributes, making sure that you're demonstrating those, but putting yourself out there for opportunities as well. So look at what your peers are doing, like looking for extra stuff that you can potentially learning that you can take on, and talking to people in advance of making that move and getting their feedback on whether it's the right thing, the right timing, etc. I think is really important.
Yeah, I had this conversation with someone in my team last year who was kind of pushing what gets them to senior manager, and for me it was at manager grade in Mace. At least you are managing the process, and you're following a procedure, and it's still kind of slightly paint by numbers. You go from A to B to C to D along the process. I think a senior manager can predict the problems that are going to come and takes preemptive action to address them, and that comes through skill and experience, so they know how to adapt to issues, and we don't get, which we did have when I first joined the business, process over quality. We must do a kickoff, we must do a pink, we must do a red, that must be 2 weeks apart. And when you've done the pink and it's awful, we don't then just push straight onto a red review. The senior manager can step back and say, right, how am I going to reshape the team or reshape our proposition or bring different people in or take a different approach to get to the end result of a high quality submission, as opposed to, right, I've done that step, now the next step. And I think for me, that's the big step up, is you become aware of what you're trying to deliver rather than following a process. And I think that's the big step up to senior manager. I think as well, in a business like ours, you're getting involved in extracurricular. You're being a good corporate citizen, you're supporting networks, you're supporting improvement projects in the bid team, or you're even bringing things forward. So people we've got at manager grade, we have them leading a lot of our improvement projects, because it gives them an opportunity to do stuff that isn't just bidding day to day, whether it's our digital bids program or bid process improvement or capture process improvement. They're generally led by slightly more junior staff, because it gives them a leg up. So I think if you're not getting those opportunities, that's also a conversation with your line manager about what can I do beyond the day job to broaden my capability and skill set. I think as you go beyond senior manager, and I'm just here, Melissa and Chloe's using this, I think it's the fundamental, you've got to have bid management, but after that you're looking at negotiation and influencing, and a lot of those personal ones is what then moves you beyond senior manager upwards. It's less important that you're a great bid manager, it's more that you can bring teams and people together and shape a process, and the bid management is almost a given. Don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with both of those. We have a framework, like Chloe said, and so there is that. But like Mike said, I mean, you have to also speak to your line manager and let them know that you want to advance, so we can have those discussions and put those initiatives in place and keep you.
And I would say to all line managers, if you don't know when your people want to be promoted or what their aspirations are, that's a problem. And there's not enough talk about how people progress in organizations, and it should be an open dialogue between line managers and employees. And you should both be, a line manager should understand what career aspirations someone has, and they should be helping to support them. And also sometimes there's an element of making sure that, so that you can kind of talk someone down if they think they're ready to get promoted and you think they're miles off, then you need to have that conversation as well. Because there's nothing worse than people being on different pages, but supporting each other. But yeah, I don't ever think there's enough conversations that happen, and then I think people leave because those conversations don't happen.
Mike, one point I just want to pick up on there, which is really interesting. You've talked about, someone stepping up. It's the wider skill set, so the internal projects and things like that. It almost sounds like then, if someone is saying that they are getting frustrated and bored with the monotony of bidding, there are actually all these other parts that you could be doing, whether that's aspirations for team management or project development or knowledge library growth. It seems like that's an easy win for people that want more variety.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's a sideways move rather than an upwards move. If actually you find a passion for knowledge management, then why not go hunt for that sideways move into a same kind of grade, but a knowledge manager role or a capture manager role, or specifically focused on interview coaching. Some firms have that as a specific skill set. So I think the idea that career progression is always upwards is a bit flawed in the way that people think about careers now. In my team particularly, there's a lot of people who just want to do the job and want to have a good stable job, be a bid manager or be a designer, and that's their kind of aspiration. And so we've got to support those people as much as the people who want to get promoted every 5 minutes. Not that I have people like that, I should say, because I've just noticed some of them on the call. But we used to have it that my colleague who used to work at Mace used to say to me that some of the team would kind of expect a promotion every 6 months, and if they didn't, they were gone. And there was a higher churn in the bid team that might be in the bid team at Mace before I joined. I think there's a bit of self-awareness there about it's very easy to jump roles, but actually I think you'll soon get caught out because you haven't got that base knowledge and experience to back up your grade and everything else. And that's when you get worse job satisfaction because you're out of your depth and you're struggling. And I think it's a short-term gain for a long-term career pain.
Okay. Talking of upskilling, and it's a sensitive topic, so I'm going to do this carefully. A couple of people have asked about the APMP and should they be training, signing up to it to help them develop their career. Are there any thoughts on that? And we're not APMP affiliated, so I think we can say whatever we like. But
we all are. So we said this.
Right.
So we're all corporate members.
Mike, you go first.
Well volunteered.
For those on the webinar, this was a pre-planned one because we had to be very careful what we say here. Right, so my view is the APMP is fantastic for networking, building your relationships, and for me personally, that has helped me to progress, I think, faster through the industry because I've got that peer-to-peer knowledge and learning not just from those in my kind of market, and I have great relationships with my key competitors, but those outside of my market and seeing what others are doing has been amazing. And actually, it's been a bit of a sad thing really with COVID and lockdown is we've lost that ability to network and talk bids with people, because who doesn't like talking about bids? Well, bid people do, so that's a good thing. I think certification is important up to a certain level. I think I do encourage my team to get foundation and go to practitioner, and I think it does demonstrate a base knowledge, but like we talked about, kind of developing skills beyond a certain level. I don't think it's as important to kind of focus on the certification side. I think it's more it's recognition early on in your career that you're kind of reaching a certain standard. Foundation's relatively I wouldn't say easy, but relatively easy to secure. I think practitioner takes a bit of knowledge, and that's one that I would probably look for in people at kind of manager, senior manager level, because it does demonstrate they've applied knowledge rather than maybe learn the body of knowledge, which is kind of what the foundation one is. I think you have to take the Americanism of APMP with a pinch of salt. I think the UK board do some good work to try and dilute that, but it's still very American, and it's still very American federal kind of defense bidding focused. So I think for smaller firms, it has less applicability. And I think some of the spreading of the APMP and certification, everything else, is probably not where I would take it if I was on the international board. But I recognise they're actually not really a professional body. They're a corporate organisation that makes management fees. They're not like the RSCS or the RIBA. They are a corporate entity, and therefore they have to make money, and they've got a corporate plan to do that.
I would just add, I agree with all that. I would just add that I think one thing it does do is, certainly for potentially, as you said, Mike, more junior grades, it does give you a level playing field where it comes to kind of like what you call things and the process you would go through and how you should do that. And I know that when we interview people, it's something that if I know they've been through that foundation level accreditation, they're going to have that, which is useful because you can speak the same language. So I do find, I think at junior level it's interesting, and it can be beneficial. I agree with you, as you progress and you've got other experiences, your other experiences are probably more relevant than having accreditation.
David, I'm going to come to you for the next question. What do you think the bids world is going to look like in 5 years? How is it going to change? Is it going to be very different? Not different at all? What's your take?
So something that I noticed over the last couple of years, during the pandemic, was that, just going back to APMP, there was a lot more when everyone had a lot more time on their hands, a lot more people were going down the capture route or looking to APMP to go down the capture route. So I think we are a little bit behind the US in terms of our culture to work winning, where it's quite bonus heavy. For one, like capture seems to be more prevalent in the US than it does over here. I think we're slowly going down that route. So I think in a few years' time, if you've done your capture practitioner exam, etc., I think that's going to carry more weight to you as a candidate. I'd be interested maybe to push that back to the panelists to see what your view on the capture element has been, and whether there's been a uptick in that.
Go ahead.
No, you go, Melissa.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say I completely agree. Like, we are definitely sort of shifting our mindset towards specialisms like capture and strategy and writing and presentation coaching, and sort of away from the sort of day-to-day churn that's going to be done by automated programs where you sort of type your client's name into a program and out comes a prefab bid, as it were. So yeah, I think the capture is going to be really important, us getting out in front of bids and sort of stopping that process in its tracks if we can, putting ourselves out of jobs.
And it's not out of a job. I think it's one element. What I would say at PwC, we have pursuit coaches that do that capture part. And those people, like, I'm just picking up one of the questions about the role of curiosity in bidding, because for me, that's one of the, at capture stage, those pursuit coaches, that's one of the things they're doing, like being curious, like opening the box of thoughts about what you can possibly do, what the client might be looking for, what the client doesn't know that they might need to know. It's kind of those solutions that you're building that adds that a kind of approach and strategy, and thinking of it in a different way. And so I think from a capture point of view, we're getting, because I feel like the industry within organizations is getting more well recognized, like bidding as a profession. I think actually they're asking for help earlier. And I think sales is becoming more professional as a whole, which means that we're finding out about things earlier. And clients are wanting support from organizations to kind of like co-create a solution. So actually, that's when you're really looking at that capture stage. And we can, as bidding professionals, as pursuit coaches, or whatever you may call it at your different organizations, really support teams and clients to come up with the best possible outcome.
Yeah, we are in the early journey of capture. I would, maybe it's because people had time in their hands. I don't know, David, but certainly every bid manager now wants to do capture. I think when we've gone through our appraisals this year, it's probably at the top of everyone's development list. I think they see it as the shiny thing that they want to get involved in. But I think actually we need to be careful that it is, and keep it as a professional kind of skill that it is in its own right. It's not kind of a bolt-on of bid managers. And I did go for a bit of a moan last year with my team, who would do a pre-bid kickoff and call it a capture planning meeting, and a week before the bid comes out. And I've quickly eradicated. I think I've eradicated that. Those of my team who are on the call can tell me if I've not. But I kind of threw my toys out the pram and said, this isn't capture. Doing a workshop a week before the bid comes out to develop your thinking isn't capture. So we're still early in that journey, and I think in an environment like Mace's, and I guess to some extent JLL and PwC, where we have seller doers, it's the next thing that we have to break down, is that the people recognizing they need help in that. We've got to the point they recognize they need help in bidding, and then they're no longer bid experts themselves. I mean, when I joined the industry, definitely I had technical people telling me how I was doing bids wrong. Thankfully they don't do that anymore. And I think capture's the same now, because business development is in the job description of everyone at Mace, and capture essentially is the more formalized version of business development. So everyone thinks they already do it and do it fine. So we've got to kind of prove that it's a worthy kind of work winning capability in its own right for us.
Mike, you've talked about therefore engagement from stakeholders, the business, technical individuals no longer telling you how to do your job. I'm intrigued to hear from you three. Are you the busiest you've ever been? We speak to loads of businesses, and bidding, everyone thought it was really busy 2 and a bit years ago, and then it stayed busy for most of the pandemic, and now it's busy. Is that what you three are seeing? You know, when we talk about 5 years from now, it doesn't seem like it's slowing down, does it?
No.
Those are three weary heads.
Yeah, so that's the challenge of growing, isn't it? When as you grow, there's more bids and more requirement. Thankfully, I've got the budget to grow the team to correspond. I've got 8 roles at the moment. If you're interested in working at Mace, speak to David and send your CV in. US, India, UK, Saudi. So it's a challenge to find the right people, but actually I'm in a very fortunate position that when I put my budget in for this year, I didn't have any pushback at all, and I asked for a 20% increase on last year's budget. So I was very pleased that the business saw the benefit in shaping the bid team to respond.
And we're seeing exactly the same thing. So the business, it's one of the key areas the businesses have identified they want to invest in and grow. And I think that is like respective of how busy they are, professionalizing your organization. I mean, like when lockdown happened, like the bids team was the first team that everyone called on. Oh my God, how on earth do I do a virtual pitch? And for the first time, and that's continued. And so it elevated our position hugely. And it really has helped and grown, and people see the value that we add, and that we're like with sometimes one of the most important teams, if not the most important, on winning work. but it's at the moment, yes, it's mentally busy. I've never seen it like this. Like the whole, like the firm, like the market. I know that when I talk to friends who don't even work in the same industry, but everyone is crazily busy.
I'm aware that we've got 7 minutes left, so I've got one last question. If anyone's got any more questions from attendees, please get them typing down, and we'll try and cover them. Like every industry, the bids industry is a pyramid. There are a lot more bid coordinators than managers, a lot more bid managers than heads of, and most organizations can only really have one head of. Is there a chance of breaking out of that? Someone asked when they registered, an example of someone that's moved to C-suite. And my answer to that is there is. Have a look at Ross Ashbourne, who's now a partner at EY, who started his career in bids. But, for you three, Melissa, do you see there being a way out of bids, but upwards movement?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, our last head of sales and BD was a bids person, and he worked his way up and, reported into the board. And so I think it's definitely an option. But as you say, there definitely are less roles up there. And so it is a bit more challenging.
I would say that the skills that you learn while working on bids will set you up to move to any position you potentially want to go to. Because in a bidding environment, you see the worst of everyone. If you can still cope and manage those stakeholders effectively and build good relationships in very stressful situations where people are not always nice, then that's those skills and creating sometimes getting that your hard skin, make it to being resilient and flexing your style, as I said earlier, is so important. And I think 100%. You also see quite a large area of the sales cycle as well. So even though it's the winning part, as you say, capture is super important. So you see that as well. But depending on if it's for repeat clients, you actually get that client feedback, going and talking to the client after you've potentially done a bid as well. I think you actually see quite a large part of it. And yeah, you can take those skills that you've learned upwards. Why not?
Yeah.
I'll be running PwC one day, I'm sure.
I stepped away from my previous firm because I didn't want to move into a partner, senior position, because I was enjoying bids too much. I think we shouldn't always be rushing for it. But you're right, transferable skills. During lockdown, I went and worked on the NHS Nightingale in London as the ops director, leading that team, and it was really easy just to move in because all the skills of managing people, dealing with stress, dealing with difficult challenges, coordinating people, cutting through the crap to understand what was really important, and we got that built in a week. So it's what you make it. All the skills you learn, as Chloe says and Melissa says, as you go along. I mean, you can move out and move into other roles, but it's like any C-suite. I mean, coming through a professional career, there's only a certain amount of C-suite positions, so you're up against the best to get to those, and all those negotiating, influencing, networking skills, and the network you build and the value you give to the business is all what will get you there, as opposed to just being a great bid manager.
Perfect. Laura Jane has asked about mobility, more or less support for working remotely. David, I'm going to come to you because we've seen it with 20 different businesses. How's it going?
Yeah, it's a question I'm getting asked a lot at the moment. How many roles are fully remote? So my personal view is that I don't think bids should be fully remote forever. I think there's a lot of value, in being able to meet your stakeholders, in person. We're talking about, earlier on in the conversation, the key skills of being able to influence people, and fundamentally that's that builds up over time and in person. There's parts of the role that definitely you can take away. At home, writing is one of those. If you're there creating content, you really want to be annoyed by someone behind you or another colleague, etc. So the top line message from a lot of companies is usually a 60-40 split, one way or another, and I think that's fair. I don't know if the panel's got a different view on that.
Exactly that. Yeah, anyone in our team, with the exception of a few people who have different circumstances, are on a what we call based arrangement, which is at least 60% of their time in the office, but we work flexibly. So you're right, you could be reviewing and you'll lock your stuff away for a few hours and therefore you might work from home. But when it first started, everyone loved working from home, but I think people have realized they miss being in a team. And if you've come through your career being in the office, seeing people, actually it's not as great as it once was. So I think there are remote bid roles and we have people in our team who work remotely, but I think if you're going to develop in a larger business, being in amongst your colleagues is really important for development.
Yeah,
Good point.
yeah.
Playing devil's advocate with that, because you've talked about variety and movement and growth, there are some people that might live in Kent but want to work for a business that are based up north and skill set. Would you encourage people just that wouldn't work, or do you think there is a way around it at all?
Well, I live in Somerset and I sort of am in London when I'm in the office. I think there is a way around it. I think you have to be clever with your time, and you have to be open and transparent with what you're doing. I think having an openness and making sure that people are aware of what you're doing is really important. And I will say it's harder when you first join a firm than when you've been there for ages. And whether that's right or wrong, I'm not sure. And there is something around individuals as well. So we've had people start during lockdown, and we've had those people leave during the last 2 years as well. We've also had people start during lockdown and be promoted during lockdown because they've been so absolutely fantastically brilliant. And I've never met them face to face. So it really does. It does depend on the individual as well, how much people are willing to go, okay, I've been told I can put a coffee in someone's diary. Do they really mean that? Those people have already done it and they've met that person and the next person. So there is a bit around self-ownership around, if you're not there face to face, fine, but making sure that you're not just locked away and people forget about you.
Real. Guys, I'm really sorry. Thank you for the flood of questions. I'm sorry we haven't been able to get through all of them. As ever, an hour has disappeared. And look, one last thank you to the panel for giving up your lunch breaks, if lunch breaks are even a thing in bid management. I don't think they are. Thank you so much for your insights. I'm gonna, well, as long as the technology works, I've recorded this. So please, if people want recordings or to share with teams, reach out. But thank you everyone for joining. I'm sure there'll be follow-up questions, follow-up conversations on LinkedIn. But yeah, panel, thank you very much. I hope you all have good rest of your Mondays and good luck with any bids that are on at the moment.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.